Awesome. So my name is Kay Anderson. I am the Director of Operations over at Fishtown District. Today, I wanted to introduce our partners from Lutheran Settlement House. We have Richie and Toby, who are going to be leading today's presentation. Erica is also here, who is a member of our Public Safety Steering Committee, so I'm sure most of you recognize her as well. But yeah, I'll turn it over to Toby and Richie, and thank you both for agreeing to put this on, and we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Kay, and thanks all of y'all for being here with us today. So as was said before, my name's Richie. I'm the community educator at Lutheran Settlement House, so I run trainings on how to support survivors of domestic violence, as well as work to engage more men in the domestic violence movement, and have been doing this sort of work around intervention, creating alternatives to dealing with harm or conflict at Lutheran for around 3 years now, but have been in the larger movement for 5 or 6. That's just a little bit about me. Toby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Toby. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the manager for the education team at Lutheran Settlement House. So supporting Richie, the other educators who do trainings, come to this work through community organizing and activism. So I've done a lot of both intervening and training activists and professionals and all sorts of folks on standing up for communities and for each other. So really excited to be with y'all. Thanks again for having us.
Thanks for that, Tobes. And Erica, do you want to say anything about yourself?
I'm a Capricorn. No, I'm kidding. My name is Erica Zavloff. I'm the Director of Development and Communications at Lutheran Settlement House, and I'm really just here to support Toby and Richie, who are fantastic at what they do. So I just want them to speak and wow us. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. Over the next hour and a half, we're going to be talking about, different creative interventions to how we navigate sticky situations in our lives and our communities. And we just want to welcome y'all into this. We want to start by just welcoming y'all into this space, however you're arriving right now. So, we are in the middle of a pandemic, a larger political uprising is happening. There's just a lot going on. You might have kiddos or puppies running around your house, other things that you might need to take care of while we're on this call or training today. So we really want to just invite y'all to show up in whatever way is going to support you to maximize your learning, and let you know that all of that, whether or not you need to step away or go deal with something, all of that is welcome here as we move through things. So welcome everyone. I'd like to kick things off by just getting to know a little bit more about who's in the room with us. So if folks are down, I'd love for folks one at a time to take yourself off mute, introduce yourself, and also if you're open to it, share what's a curiosity that you're bringing with you today as we move through the training.
Maybe whoever starts can start and then pass it to someone who you think can go next. We can help.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm Randy Sherwood. I work for the Fishtown District in marketing. And I think why am I here? Or what am I looking for? I think that what I'm really looking for is to find ways to step outside my comfort zone when I see something happening. When I see something happening, whether it's, a homeless person or, something, more severe, to know how to handle myself and not be fearful.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks, Randy. You want to pass it to someone, Randy?
How about I pass it to Jamie?
Hi, everyone. I'm the Safety Committee Chair for the Fishtown Neighborhood Association, and I am here today to listen for everyone and pass along to the board and everyone what everyone else here and in the neighborhood is doing related to safety. And so I guess a curiosity would be how we can all work together more closely on safety issues in the community, what with the bid now coming into existence, and just doing more collaboratively together. Oh, and I can pass it on to Venice.
Thanks, Jamie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jamie. Venice Whitaker, I am the constituent service representative for Council President Darrell Clark in the 5th District in the Fishtown area. I'm also a resident of Fishtown. I attended a similar training through Lutheran. It was in person. I think it was over a year ago. So was just curious to follow up and also just to be engaged and inform our constituents of everything that Lutheran and the BID and all the organizations are doing together. So I will pass it on to Don.
Hi, I'm Don Allen. I'm a local business owner. I own the Town Barker at Gerard and Burke's. I'll most likely be off camera and muted for most of the time because I'm working and I have dogs barking in the background, so I apologize. I guess the reason I'm curious about today is I've always actually kind of been a person who steps in when I see situations. I lived in Los Angeles for 11 years. In the last 5, I lived in Skid Row area. So I have a lot of, not experience, but experiences of that nature. And as I get older, I'm trying to learn how to be a little more de-escalative, if that's a word. A lot of times when I've had to step into situations, I have the privilege of being a rather large man of stature, and I can use that to my advantage, but I'm trying to find ways more to be less combative, confrontational, be more helpful, be more of service, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. I will pass it on to, I can't see very well, Emily, I guess.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Donais. I'm the Community Relations Manager at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. And I also sit on a couple neighborhood groups and boards. I sit on the board of Lutheran Settlement House, Fishtown Co., the Fishtown BID, and the Police District Advisory Council. What I'm looking forward to learning today are new tips and techniques, like everybody else had mentioned. Being somebody that's out in the community pretty often, I feel we could all get a refresher on this and learn some new skills. I'm pretty well versed in certain police policies from sitting on the police council and my husband being a police officer, but I think this is a great opportunity to learn how else we can help out our neighbors and the residents that are in need of services. And I'm going to pass it on to Chris Romano.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I am a small business owner and resident of Fishtown. Pretty much I'm just looking to gain more knowledge about this, pass that knowledge on to other people that I come into encounter with, and anything we can do to make police jobs easier and to make them a little bit less involved into areas that they don't need to be involved in would be fantastic. And gee, who's left? Kay, did you go? All right, let's do it.
Hey everyone, already introduced myself. I'm Kay. I'm the Director of Operations over at the Fishtown District. I guess the biggest curiosities that I'm coming to for today, similar to what a lot of other folks have said about, you know, as somebody who does find themselves involved in these types of experiences with some frequency, I'm just looking for some sort of structure or procedure that I can fall back on to help make me feel safe and comfortable, as well as feel like I'm doing something the right way instead of kind of feeling like I'm floundering in situations where I feel like I need to intervene in some sort of sense.
Awesome, thanks, Kay.
Oh, and did we get everybody that isn't presenting? Okay.
You nodding, Erica, although I did not.
Yeah, Erica. I'm going to popcorn to Erica.
Okay. I'm Erica. I'm interested in, you know, I think this is part of this bigger idea of kind of figuring out like our Fishtown identity, what we want it to look like, how we're making it safe and inclusive, and what are ways when we're seeing instances where, you know, someone might be in danger or someone is harming someone else, what are ways that we can intervene that are coming from still like a caring, safe approach, and how do we do that? Because I am a social worker and I'm still not 100% sure.
Awesome. Thanks for jumping in, Erica, and thanks everybody for sharing. I appreciate that. Richie, do you have a curiosity for today?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious about how there is actually, I think, already so much wisdom in this room around what can work and how we can stay grounded in holding our own safety and increasing other folks' safety. And I'm curious about how we can continue to brainstorm together with other new tactics or tried and true ones that can help increase safety for everyone in the larger Fishtown community. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's me.
And I know for me, I work in Fishtown, but I live over here in West Philly. So a lot of my curiosity is just like learning about the neighborhood more and like what is happening there and what's going on, what are y'all seeing and experiencing or grappling with, which is fun because then it leads us into what we're up to next. In the chat just now, I pasted a link to a Google slide. I want to invite folks, if you're able to click on it. And if you're not able to, totally okay, we'll make it work. But if you can go to it, these are little Post-it notes that you can double click on and type whatever you would like into the Post-it. So we're curious to just try and gather some ideas of what are scenarios, like what are some of the things that you've seen or that you've heard about that bring up this like, ooh, I wish I could have intervened. I tried to, but it didn't go well. This is a time I called the police, but I wish there was another option. Like, what are the things that we're talking about here? If you can't visit the Google Slides because you're on your phone, say, feel free to either unmute and shout it out, we'll type it for you, or just type it in the chat box and we can paste it over here. But we'll just give a couple minutes to try and gather some scenarios, just brief couple words like, it was, I saw a domestic violence incident outside of my store, something like that, you know? And again, if you can't click on it to edit, feel free to type it in the chat. And then we get to get all messy with figuring out the font size and making the Post-its bigger and smaller.
How do you type again?
You double click on, not your screen, but if you click the link in the chat, it'll take you to this, and then you double click on the Post-it and it lets you type. So the share screen is for folks who are unable to click on the Google slide link. Sometimes it doesn't work well on phones. And for those folks, again, just unmute, shout it out, or type it in the chat if there's a scenario that you want listed on here, and we can type it for you. Feel free to private message if you want to keep it anonymous like the others are.
I am so technically not savvy. Can I just shout something out?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there.
Yeah, you're fine. What you got?
Give me a minute. I'll be back.
Okay. Perfect timing. Lucky enough for all of us, we don't care about spelling or grammar. So get at it with however it comes out is the right way.
Can I pop in?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm so technically not savvy. I just wanted to mention an incident that I actually recently had on Girard Avenue about a month ago. where I intervened in a, I guess it would be considered a domestic violence kind of situation. It was a woman trying to get away from a man. So I intervened in that. So I think that was probably one of the first situations where maybe I did the better choices in it, but I would like to hear maybe other things I could have done, because I do feel at the end of it, I don't know if I helped her as much as I could have. I did help her get away, but I didn't know if I helped her as much as I could have. So.
Awesome, thank you. And Richie, was that you typing it in? We'll just hope. All right, and one came in the chat box. It got very small. All right, so just take another 30 seconds or so to finish what you're typing or add another one. And then while folks are finishing up, just take a look at these. And I'm wondering if there's any patterns or just what are you all noticing in looking at some of the things that are happening here? Anything standing out?
There's a lot of overlap.
What are, like, I see some, but what's the overlap that you're noticing first?
Well, there's several about drug addiction. There's a few about abuse or domestic related issues. Stuff that, I don't know, I would say that, you know, most of us aren't experiencing, but we're seeing.
Don added in the chat, mental health as a pressing issue. Seems like another overlap there as well. Yeah. So issues with drugs, abuse or domestic violence, mental health. And yeah, maybe it's stuff that we ourselves aren't experiencing, but we're seeing happen for the people around us.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these aren't necessarily like immediate, direct concerns about our own safety as individuals, but kind of looking at protecting a victim or you know, some of that is like protecting the actor in this sense too.
So, okay, can I say that back just to make sure? So noticing that some of these scenarios, the thing that we are wanting to do is to like protect the person who is doing the thing. And in some instances, it's to protect a different person or something else entirely, like say the stealing packages, for instance. Like, oh, yeah, we're not like trying to protect the person doing that necessarily, but address that issue. Yeah. And Chris, I saw you in the chat naming poverty as the root cause for a lot of what we're seeing up here. So thanks for adding that one in. All right, so I want to draw your attention quick to this corner over here. This red blob is actually a pile of little X's that you can move around if you click on them. So I just want to invite you to looking at these scenarios that y'all either have seen or heard about or other people have. I want you to drag the X for if we pretend that we live in a world where calling the police just is not an option, which of these scenarios are you not excited to intervene in? You're like, if the police aren't an option, shit, I don't know what to do, but I don't want to be the one doing it. Does that make sense? And same for folks who are unable to navigate to the slides, totally okay. You can shut one out if you want. just watch it happen or type in the chat. Please put an X by blank. So again, it's pretend we're in a world where police are not an option. Which one are you just like really wishing would disappear instead of you have to be the one to deal with it? And Don, I see another one in the chat, so I will put it on there for you about a man with mental health issues defecating on cars. And then I'll add some X's to mental health and domestic violence and drug abuse. And then Richie, can I invite you back in?
Mm-hmm. Yep. First, I just want to just appreciate the detailedness and vulnerability that folks are offering here, because these things do happen all the time, and sometimes they don't get talked about. And one of the things that we want to just offer with the space is support, to be in the laboratory of experimenting and supporting each other in some of these situations that can be really tricky and really hard. So just wanting to appreciate everyone for your participation so far. So, we're here offering this training because we're in a current context where people are much more curious about what are alternatives to calling the police, either because calling the police isn't working for folks, or, we're trying to not have them doing way too much work or responding to all of these different sorts of incidences. And so I'm curious for folks now, thinking particularly about the ones that you maybe put an X on, what is the thing in there that gets in the way of you intervening there? Like, what is the belief, or what scares you about not being able to call the police in that situation? And so Toby's now going to shift to another slide. And so we want to invite folks now. So thinking about that scenario, whether or not it's a domestic violence situation, or some sort of mental health thing, or someone who's using drugs, nodding out on the street, what's the thing that scares you about the police not being an option?
Becoming a victim.
Sorry?
Becoming a victim.
Becoming a victim. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing that.
Feel free to keep doing that. Shout them out at the chat or type them yourself. Sorry, I cut someone off there.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Making it worse for the person, the victim. So specifically in, domestic violence or child abuse.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Not knowing what to do.
Not knowing what to do. Yep. Mm-hmm. What else?
Feel free to put little stars if that's true for you as well.
Misidentifying the roles. Yep. Totally hear that. Other barriers that are coming up for folks? Other things that feel hard in thinking about intervening? Well, we can start with this list. Feel free to just keep adding as we continue to talk about this stuff. Minding my business. Yeah, I hear that. I'm curious actually about that one, if whoever's writing that, or if that feels true to another person, what that my business mantra might be or what it might mean.
For me, and I wrote that, I think that especially when it comes to domestic situations or intervening in someone's family or something like that, there's like a narrative or cultural ideal to, you know, what happens in somebody else's house is their business and it's not for you to say anything about or intervene in any way.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And I remember in a particular DV situation that I intervened in, just walking around my neighborhood, the abuser who ended up coming back to that situation, that was one of the things that they kept saying back to me. It was very clear that the survivor actually didn't want the business minded just to themselves, but it's a strong belief that we all get ingrained into. And part of what helps me there, just in case it's useful, is thinking through, in minding my own business, like who is that impacting most, right? Like I can mind my business about my salary, but that might also mean that I'm getting paid more than my staff, like than other staff, or like particularly women on staff that I work with. And so that's not something I necessarily want to mind my business about. I want to try to create equity and know when that belief can be supportive or when it can get in the way of actually, you know, contending with some of the stuff that gets hidden. So just wanted to offer that as one. Could I also ask for the folks that put stars next to not knowing what to do, if you're willing to just expand or unpack that a little bit more?
I did that just as an example of what to do, but if that is true for someone else and you want to shout out about not knowing what to do being a barrier.
Of course.
Well, I wrote it, and I think I just meant like not knowing if what I would do would be effective or worsen the situation or even make it better, or what the context of the situation is when you're just walking up to it.
Even knowing what to say, you know, how do you go up and approach somebody that's, you know, about to shoot up, or, you know, it's like, I'm not sure what I need to say here. You know, it's wrong, but I don't want to, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say in that situation, you know. Stop doing it. There's help. Get off the street. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I'm just to like stay there for a second. I'm curious for folks, like what happens internally if there isn't a right answer in the situations, if there is no right answer.
Is there a wrong answer?
I think there are things that can be more harmful or less harmful, definitely. And also particularly in terms of like interventions, something that I always carry is like, it's never good or bad, there's just ripples. And so how am I in continued relationships to those ripples? Just to, you know, just to stay here for a second, I'm curious for folks on this thread, are there situations where interventions have happened before that you've felt like you have done a good job? Or that was the right decision?
I would say the last interaction I recently had, I felt I made some right decisions in it.
Would you mind sharing more, Don, like what supported you to know or like get the feeling that it was the right decision?
Well, maybe it would necessarily, I shouldn't say right decisions, but better decisions than maybe I had made in the past. Would be a better way to put it. Yeah, because my first instinct was to like, I'm going to call the police, you know, and I said that to him at one point, and I realized, I don't really know. I guess the really quick overhaul was a woman was literally sprinting, running a marathon, taking off down Girard, and a man was chasing her like her life depended on it. And I had stepped in. I had dogs with me. I think the fact that I had dogs with me was what made me be a little more reserved in my actions because I had 3 pit bulls who very easily could have attacked. So I was trying to keep them calm in a way. But I feel like in that situation, because I didn't escalate it, I didn't really argue with the man. They didn't speak English. So there was a language barrier there. But having lived in LA for 11 years, the one word that kind of popped in my head that I thought could be of use in this situation was mañana. So I started saying mañana to the man, like, sir, mañana, mañana. And the woman clicked in her and she's like, sí, mañana, mañana. So it was this idea, instead of challenging him, just letting him know, like, oh, you can continue tomorrow. You can talk to her tomorrow. It'll be fine. Like, and I kept my dogs and my body around her to keep her physically separated from him. And we just walked away. And in that situation, I also referred to her as what she wanted to do. Because as we walked by the police station, I said, do you want to go to the police? And she just kind of looked at me and I said, okay, we're just going to walk. We'll just continue to walk. And I walked with her until she looked back and said, okay, I think I'm good. And she just took off running again. So in that situation, I felt bad in the sense, like, I don't know if I provided any long-lasting help to her, if she'll see him tomorrow, if encounter him tomorrow. But I felt like I made the right choices in the situation where I didn't really argue with the man. I didn't try to overpower the man. I didn't try to dominate. I just was very friendly and saying, like, tomorrow, mañana. And so in that situation, I feel I did make better choices than I have, because other situations I've been in, I've gotten broken noses and things of that nature. So this was somewhat of a win, I guess.
Thanks for sharing that, Don. And just in case you haven't seen it, you just got a shout out in the chat, hometown hero. On a similar tip for you and for everyone else while we're here, I'm curious, like, in thinking about the interventions that we've made or we didn't make in any given situation, like, what is the goal of intervention? What is your goal in thinking about intervening?
Stop the share real quick, just so folks don't get startled.
Stopping whatever's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would echo off of that. Also, to harken back to a little bit of minding your own business kind of sentiments. For me, I do mind business, generally speaking. What the line in the sand for me is if someone is being victimized in the moment. If someone is a child, a woman, anyone, homeless, if someone is being the victim of someone else, that's when I'm like, I don't even make the choice. I don't have a flight reflex. I only have a fight reflex. So, but I think kind of what she's saying, like, to stop what's happening. For me in particular, it's if someone is in harm. If someone's writing on a wall or damaging property, I'm probably less if I've seen a package stolen, for example, I might take a photo of the person, I might report it, but I'm probably not going to confront that person.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that, Don. What are other folks thinking?
I echo a lot of what Don just said about, if somebody's safety, like physical safety, is at risk, I'm definitely more likely, or if somebody's being victimized, I'm definitely more likely to intervene than like a property or quality of life issue. I guess that the kind of gray area or question that I'm asking myself right now is when that person that they're harming is themselves, mm-hmm. where does that fall for me? And I've seen myself react differently to the same situation just based off of, what I know about the person or how I'm feeling that day, or, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any wisdoms that you want to offer the group there, Kay, in terms of making those decisions?
I know, so for me, speaking from experience, living in Kensington, I don't live in Fishtown, I live in Kensington. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's dealing with people who are living with addiction issues, and how those arise. I've had a lot of, being from Allentown originally. I had a lot of friends and grew up around addiction issues. So I have a lot of personal experience with it. And with that, it's sometimes difficult. You know, I used to work at Kensington and Somerset. So to separate my personal experience with addiction issues from the experience that I'm having as a professional who is trying to better the community and, you know, advocate for residents, both those without homes and with homes in the community. It can be challenging. And the one thing that I found to be helpful is persistence. If you just continue to engage the same people continuously instead of going into it with I need to change this behavior right now, but instead kind of forming a relationship of, hey, I'm around and I know things and I have resources. So when you're ready, I'm here. That was something that I learned.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Kate.
Yeah, Randy, I saw you pop in that chat there of just like some people don't want help or intervention, which has definitely been true in my experience as well. How does that land for you when you say go up to someone and want to do something that you or I believe is supportive, but they tell you to F off or leave them alone? Or
Yeah, I mean, obviously it makes you feel bad. It makes you feel badly that you can't help them, that they don't want help, that they're so trapped in a situation. Especially, in cases of domestic violence where they just can't see any alternatives. And no matter how many times you offer them alternatives, they just don't see them as viable options. And then especially like with child abuse, when you see someone that's mistreating a child, like that child really has very little options. And, short of calling the authorities and really knowing that something is going on, not just your perception of somebody who's just not being nice to their kid at that moment. It's a difficult call.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult call for sure. Yeah. Do you mind saying what happens for you after that? Like you have the interaction in the moment and you feel bad. Like
I think it depends on if you know the person. If you know the person and you have like some future interaction with them, I've been on that side where, you just continue to support them until they're ready to take some action. But if you don't know them, there's really very little you can do after the fact. I mean, you may never see them again. It could be a store where you're just never going to run into them again. So, I don't know what recourse you have other than like kind of walk away and go like, okay, well, what could I have done differently?
And can I just one last one is like, what helps you move past it?
Time. That sounds like a terrible answer, but it's like at some point you just sort of, you move on and you say like, could I have handled it differently? What could I have done differently? And then at some point you just go back to your life and, hope that things worked out for those people that you don't know.
Yeah, thanks for that.
If I can chime in, I'm sorry.
I think so, yeah. Let's see. Maybe I'll cut you off if that's all right.
That just reminded me what she was saying of an incident that I had that actually was years and years ago, but has stuck with me and kind of been a life lesson to me in what you're saying. Like I had mentioned earlier, in the last 5 years I lived in Los Angeles, I had lived in the Skid Row area, which was very trendy. Johnny Depp had a penthouse, but it was also still Skid Row, like the largest Skid Row in the country. So these were the people I encountered every day. And what I kind of learned in, the building I lived in was it had been a crack hotel for 50 years, and they had cleared out the criminal element, but it was still a very large vulnerable element in the building that were my neighbors. So these were the people I saw every day. And the thing that I kind of learned in having that experience was more than anything was trying to just meet people where they are. And like, I knew a lot of people who I would see them strung out on drugs, and I would just, hey, how's your day? Like, do you need anything? Like, how you doing? I wouldn't necessarily make it about any of that, because it taught me in a way, you go up to people and you can say like, hey, do you need my help? is there something I can do? And sometimes they'll say yes. And you just reminded me of an incident where there was a man laying in the street of Skid Row covered in urine, like trying to stand up. And I went up to him, I said, do you need help? And he said, yeah. I said, okay. So I tried to, bear hugged him up to the ground. I'm covered in urine. He's not using his legs or his feet. He's still going down to the ground. And I tried to help for a few minutes. And I said, brother, if you're not going to help yourself, if you can't get your feet under you, there's not much I can do. Do you want me to call medics? And he said, no. And I said, well, then best of luck to you, brother. And I just kind of went on my way. But that has stuck with me 15 years after the fact of like, in a way, you show up, you offer help. If they want it, you do what you can only do what you can do. And then at that point, you kind of have to walk away and live in peace that you're at least one of the ones who did something and learn to do more, as we're doing today.
John, I want to jump in because thanks for that story. We're not going to live here, but I am wondering, do you have an idea, like what's another question you could have asked him instead of the way that it did go? Like if you were going to rewrite the scenario, is there a way that you've been hoping you could have done it differently?
That's a tough one. I mean, I'm trying to think. I asked him if he needed help. He said yes. I offered him this help. When I couldn't offer the help he needed, I saw, do you need this kind of help? And he didn't. But beyond that, I maybe in a situation in here in Fishtown, maybe I could have, but in a situation where literally you're surrounded by 50 to 100,000, not joking, homeless people living it's intense. It's intense. So watch your documentary. It's intense.
It certainly sounds like a really intense situation.
Yeah, and I guess being in a situation like that, I feel like I did do all I could do. But that being said, if I were to find myself in a situation like that in a different setting, there probably is more that I could do that I'm not aware of yet.
Thanks for sharing that and being honest about where you're at. And again, I appreciate the times and the ways that you've been able to intervene. I'm going to shift us to getting into some other options, or just like a bigger list of options potentially, and want to offer, as we transition from that story, Don, the idea of, you said it first, right? Like I wanted to meet him where he was at, that there might be a question there, right? Of like, what would you like help to do? Or what does help look like for you?
Yeah.
Which is like, can be really scary. And sometimes we can't always offer the big, broad, open-ended question, because maybe they're going to say something that we can't do, and it's scary to potentially go there. But that came to mind, so I wanted to share it. I'm also going to share my screen again, so you'll see a little shift happen. We're back in that same slideshow here once my keys start working. All right, so here's our list of some of the barriers, what's difficult about it. We just wanted to offer, there's a framework that we work with, that I've worked with for a long time. We just call it the 5 Ds, not super groundbreaking name, of a few different broad ways of intervening and what it can mean. Because a lot of the times, right, I'll think first of, and most people think first of, just directly going in and like saying what's happening, asking a question about what's going on, checking in with one of the 2 people and being like, this is a thing happening, what can I do, or stop that, or something like it, yeah? And that's not obviously the only option, but it's usually the one that comes to mind first. So I'll just share quickly a real brief story from just a couple weeks ago. I live over by Fairmount Park near the Police Touch Museum. I walk my dog up there like every day. We were walking the other night. I was on a phone call and heard some kind of what I'm assuming is a domestic violence situation. A man acting as an aggressor towards a woman. He had her like purse or handbag and wouldn't give it back, and was trying to like coerce her to get into the car with him in order to get this bag back. And she didn't want to get in the car. She was saying, give it back, leave me alone, all of that stuff. So I went over directly and just said to her, like, hey, do you need some help? What's going on? And as is typical, right, the dude responded to me first and was like, she's fine, get the F out of here, right? Like, I'm sure a lot of us have had that scenario where I'm trying to check in with the person being targeted or harmed. The other one comes at me. So again, just like keeping it on the direct channel is where I was that night, because I had my dog with me, similar to Don. I think you shared it, like I'm a taller white dude, I had a dog, felt safe, was on the phone with a friend already. Just like, hey man, I'm not talking to you. What can I do to support you? Is there anything that you need? And she didn't respond to me even once, ever. Like this interaction lasted probably like 15 minutes. And she never responded at all. She looked at me, but didn't say any words. He kept telling me to leave. And I kept saying, I'm not gonna leave, right, until it feels like you're not gonna harm her, or until she's got some control back. And then I stepped back a little bit. I didn't try to stay right up in their faces, but was staying pretty direct and visible. Eventually, it doesn't matter much, but she got her bag back and got the keys, and then she drove off. I was like, cool, I'm a bounce, right? This feels like enough of an end. But that's an example of a direct intervention, right? Some of the ones that we've heard today, right, are very directly intervening. Another option that I don't think about very often, and usually works best if it's someone that you know, like Randy, you've brought that up before, is just delaying, right? Like maybe right now in this hot moment where there is a fight happening, or there is someone who's actively starting to use or whatever, maybe now is just not the time, but I know who this person is, or I know where they're gonna be. And when stuff has calmed down, I'm gonna go back and just check in with them. For me, that wasn't an option that night. I've never seen those people before or since, but that sometimes is an option, right? So you can directly do it, you can delay. Another one is just being distracting and doing something totally weird, right? So I could have just gone up to these two people very clearly in some kind of something not nice and been like, hey, do y'all know where a pizza place is around here? And just tried to shift the dynamic from this fight and just give it like a quick breather. And I've done this before, mostly in street harassment scenes where usually a guy is targeting usually a woman in a way that she clearly doesn't like, and just go up and ask him some random question that gives the other person time to just like keep it moving and get away from them while they're talking to me. And I'm not like, hey buddy, F you, blah, blah, you can't do that, right? But I did stop it from happening. Two other ones, one you can document. So maybe this is a thing that just needs to get paid attention to. And I added in here just being visibly present as a way to document. So just literally standing nearby to this couple and letting them know in the park that night, like, hey, someone's watching, yeah? Usually violence is lessened when someone's watching. Or actually like covertly or overtly taking out a phone to record it in some form or fashion could be helpful in the moment. And then the last one is delegate, right? Maybe I'm not actually the one to do it for all of the various reasons, yeah? And so I wanna either get someone to come with me, I wanna get someone who knows this person or these people and say, hey, you know, that's your friend that I saw harassing this woman. Can you talk to him about that? Because that's not cool. But I don't really know him well enough. I think he'd hear it better from you. Or similar with someone who's using, to say someone else in that community around harm reduction, have a conversation with them around Narcan and safety. And maybe it does mean calling a phone number from, I know there's like a list was generated with the group of just like, who are other people that might be able to support in this situation? But I know for me, it can get really stressful when I take on that mantle of like, I have to intervene no matter what. It can get really stressful just walking out the door, feeling like I need to do it. And I know for me that stress is not healthy or helpful. And so releasing that a little bit to say, I'm gonna intervene when I can, but I'm not like the police of the world going out to ensure safety of everyone. Like, let me just take that cape off. For me, that's how it manifests. Let me take that cape off and go about my life. And if I'm able to, I'll do something. And if I'm not, I'll think about like, is there a way to do this later? Can someone else? And maybe there's not then either, but sort of releasing the pressure of, I need to always do this one thing has been really supportive for me. So delegate can be a really helpful option. So that was a lot of words, and now there's a bunch of them on the screen. Wondering if we could just take a couple minutes before we take a quick break here. Any reactions, thoughts, concerns, questions, things like that? Any option like sticking out to you that you're like, no, definitely not that one, or hell yeah, I'm excited to try that one.
I'm thinking this distraction might work for me. I mean, that it's like you're not getting involved, but yet you're trying to like do something to reduce the
I agree. Yeah, the distraction, I think that's one that I don't always go to, but I think is a good one to be ingrained in all of us.
Yeah, that one quickly became one of my favorites because I'm like, I can be kind of direct. I can like go to where the problem is, but not in a way that I'm as worried.
Confrontational.
Exactly, confrontational. Yeah.
I think for me, there's the delegate aspect. So if there's a situation that is in more public realms, you're not around and you see other people that might be checking it out, to kind of like either make eye contact, like, is this really going on? Is this okay? And to kind of like form that unity base so you're not by yourself. Sometimes that also helps. And if you see that other people are noticing that this doesn't look right, then you know it's just not your own judgment level.
Yeah, thanks for that, Venice. Very true. And can also help break apart some of that bystander effect of like everyone's just watching, thinking someone else is going to do something, and those moments of eye contact or something can really help. Be like, oh yeah, you do it.
I think maybe even to piggyback off of what Venice was saying is to involve everyone around, you know, like really make a scene about it. Not like necessarily a scene, but make it be known that we as a community come together in this moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one that is feeling a little weird for me is document. And I think maybe that's a lot to do with where we're at in the times currently. And, you know, we've been doing a lot of documenting and we see a lot of things, and just because they're being documented and being seen and we can all agree that they're bad doesn't mean that anything changes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Is there a way that you think documenting could ever be an option, or like a time that you might think about using it? You don't have to. I'm just curious if the flip side of it is there as well.
I mean, I think that it's already one that I use all the time. If you think about our 311 system, like we're constantly documenting, you know, if trash isn't being collected, if there's littering, if, you know, a sidewalk isn't being maintained properly in front of a property or things like that. And even in those circumstances, I feel weird about that reporting mechanism because it feels like such a hands-off interaction that there's not, in my experience, there's not often positive outcomes associated with it. Like if somebody shows up at your house and hands you a ticket, for me personally, it doesn't make me any more likely to clean up my yard. Whereas if somebody had a conversation with me, that might be different. So it feels kind of like a cop-out to document sometimes.
Yeah, but on the other hand, like, you know, you're a fairly reasonable person. And if I came to you and I said, hey, Kay, look, you know, your yard's gotten a little out of control, you'd be like, oh my God, I'm mortified. Some people might be like, it's none of your business. Get off my yard. It's not your property. I don't care if you have to look at it. So like, you know, just documenting it and having somebody else go delegate and give them a ticket, maybe now it becomes more of an issue. Of course, now they know that you did it because you just went to them and said, hey, by the way.
Yeah.
I feel like document can be a little bit different in that, like taking a picture or noting pictures of a person who perhaps has stolen a package. Well, I know a lot of people are sharing things on certain Facebook safety groups. So you can tell your neighbors, you can share with them so they can identify when something might be happening. Like, you know, if the guy or female,
the person, yeah,
is you know, like around the neighborhood and they see them. I feel like there's a lot of sharing of information where document doesn't have to mean turning over to the authorities.
Yep.
I wanted to chime in just as a tool that I recently found that I think goes well with this. I quite can't remember what it's called, but it's some type of iPhone hack. It's like the 911 hack, where you can pick up your phone and say, hey, Siri, get help. And your phone will start to automatically record the interaction. And you can choose to have the video sent, email to someone, or you can also choose to have police called, have it sent to police. But it's because every interaction I ever had, I phone is out, it's documented for my own legal protection more than anything, because I do intervene and I want proof that I wasn't doing something I shouldn't be doing. But I thought that that tool was really great, that you can instantly be recording something and still be engaged.
Thanks for all of these. And I noticed the way and appreciate that, like, we're all seeing like how some of them can play together, right? How documenting can be very direct in that I'm like, okay, well, if you're not gonna, stop, then I'm just gonna film what you're doing, right? And so they can go together. Or I'm gonna document, and then delegate. Or I'm gonna come in with a distraction now, but then tomorrow when you come back into my shop, I'm gonna be like, hey, remember that thing yesterday? Why were you saying whatever to whoever, right? So they can go together. I'm also not a fan of document, and want to just like throw out there the idea of the documenting itself might be the act that helps, not just the reporting or the sharing of the documentation later. So it might just be me there being like, I will record whatever it is that's happening that makes the thing stop. I might be not even using my camera, but it just looks like I am, just to like add in, there's lots of different ways that these get to go and play.
Well, and documenting for the sake of, like, let's say posting on social media and not intervening is probably as bad as allowing the crime to continue to happen without calling the police.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just
Passive.
Yeah, it's passive and disrespectful to the victim. And I mean, anytime you see that, like, there's people standing around with their cameras and everybody's watching two guys beat the crap out of each other. It's just,
right.
It's not what you want either.
Yeah, maybe. And I'll stand up for people who maybe feel like I don't know what else I can do.
With some people, that's maybe their only recourse. Absolutely. I didn't mean to disrespect anyone by saying it's passive, but yeah.
Well, I feel like it's different with different scenarios. Like if someone's getting physically hurt and you're bystanding, then that's different than if someone is stealing a package and you don't want to endanger your own safety for something not hurting someone in the moment.
Yeah.
Could I also just offer on the document tip, like the main way that I think about it or relate to it is like, just for instance, take the political uprising that's happening right now. Like so much of what we know has to do with the fact that it's been documented, right? There are videos of like police brutality that we then have as evidence to be able to say, hey, this stuff actually happened. So when I'm documenting, it's because I'm seeing some shady stuff going on with like a young Black kid getting arrested or like intimidated by a bunch of police officers. So I wanted to offer that real quick. And then also just on the delegate piece, like particularly like when it comes to packages or mental health or like drug use stuff, sometimes like delegating to the police, might be the only option that you have. And I found in my experience that when possible, like delegating to someone that maybe just has more relationship or more weight with that person can be a really effective way to like have a more long-term intervention. So there's a classic story of a survivor who came into Lutheran to get services, and we asked her if she wanted to get a protection from abuse order, and she said, no, my abuser doesn't worry about going to jail. He's not afraid of cops. None of that's going to work for me. And so our counselor asked them, well, is there anyone that they are afraid of or that they do listen to? And the survivor said, they're not afraid of going to jail, but they're so afraid of our pastor. So then our counselor worked with the survivor to role play with the pastor, how the pastor could step in and do that intervention in that abusive situation. So just like wanting to hold, there are many different ways to think about delegating depending on the situation too.
All right, I think, yeah. It's like, is this next? It is. Great. I need to just like, let's take 5, come back together at 9 after. Just like stand up, stretch, give your eyes a break from the screen, and then we'll reconvene at 2:09. See you soon. Let's put some instructions in the chat box.
Yeah, so maybe if breakout rooms aren't a thing, folks, instead, if we just wanted to, everyone just go internal, take some time to yourself to think back through that situation or scenario, and then thinking about either the 5 Ds that we offered or another thing that maybe is coming up for you. What's a different option that you might try next time? Any questions there?
Hi guys, thanks. I'm gonna pop off for some work things, but I wanted to just say goodbye and thank you. And
Thanks for joining, Jamie.
yes, okay, good day.
If there's someone who's ready, who has a scenario in mind, whether we've heard it before or not, which one are you thinking about? Maybe invite some thinking out loud.
So I'm thinking about a recent intervention that I had where I actually did delegate. So I was back at NKCDC at the time, so I was working at Somerset and Kensington, and there was an overdose on the sidewalk outside of our building. And I was fortunate enough to have a relationship with the nearby NAAA group and know the leader of that group very well. So when I saw the overdose happening, I was able to ask one of my coworkers to stay with the person, and then I ran over to the NAAA place because I knew that they had Narcan on site and would be more equipped to handle the situation than I would, as well as the follow-up. So I guess that was a time that I did delegate, and it worked out well.
The other idea, like what if you didn't know the local NAAA chapter, other ideas that you think might work? And I'm gonna stop the share so it's more just like, here we are together, trying to work on it.
Well, I think in that situation, I'm also Narcan trained. So if I wasn't close to the NAAA place, I did know that I had Narcan at my desk and I could run into my office and administer Narcan myself. But I think in that situation, delegating was more appropriate just because I've never had to Narcan someone, even though I'm trained and, know how to do it. I've never done it. So I think that having somebody who was more experienced and, knew the nuances of, and even knew this person personally, it was just a better decision to delegate there. But that would have been my other option, was direct or calling 911 and asking for emergency response from, police, EMTs, etc.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, I've used delay. I mean, obviously in a domestic abuse situation, you maybe don't want to talk about it when the person's like at the height of, emotional state. So you'll delay talking to them about it, maybe when they're a little calmer and, feeling a little less, I don't want to say manic, but, up like at the height of their emotions, and they don't know what they want to do, and they'll say a lot of things that they think they want to do, like I'm gonna leave, or I'm gonna talk to an attorney, or I'm gonna do this. And then when things calm down, and their perspective changes, you need to kind of wait it out until they're ready to listen again.
Thanks for sharing that, Randy. And I'm curious, either on that situation or another one, I remember at the beginning of the training, you had said that you wanted to take like a step out of your comfort zone. Is there a tactic around intervention that feels like it's taking a step that way for you? That you
I
need
think
to try again?
distraction definitely is something that I wouldn't have thought of. I would be, I mean, just to walk up and 5 feet to walk into a situation like where there's something violent going on. I just don't think that, I don't know what I'm going to do to help somebody. So I would look at it and say if I could distract them and just be say something, anything to get, the situation to de-escalate. And that's something I never would have thought of before. Even if it's yelling to somebody else, hey Mark, wait up, I'm coming over, at least, something to jar them, know that there's other people there sort of watching what's happening.
That's really creative. I like the hey, other person.
Yeah, right.
Who knows? Yeah.
Anything to at least be hey, I'm here, I see what's happening.
I want to give a quick shout out to something that Richie, you and I didn't talk about, so this is fun. Just a handout that we can include in, I guess we can email it to Randy or Mark or Kay, someone who is helping coordinate. A handout that we have about working with someone around the stages of change, which is something that all of us have experienced before when changing any kind of habit. Going from not thinking that biting my nails is a problem to being yeah, but whatever, to I want to stop biting them, to actually doing it and maintaining it, right? And this type of thing can be applied to being in an abusive relationship or abusing harmful substances, things like that, of just meeting people where they're at along the stages of change can really help and change how the interaction goes. And so we have a handout that's specific to domestic violence. And there's ways to look at it and get creative, I hear y'all are already doing, of just oh yeah, what might this sound like if the person is in this type of place of saying this isn't a problem, but me on the outside, I see it's a problem, so I'm going to approach them in this type of way, versus, oh, this is the person asking for help, so I'm going to approach them in this type of way. So just want to name that as a thing to throw out there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think Chris has a question.
Hey, hold on. Sorry, I was tying my shoe. I think that just one thing that's pretty cool that I've done in many situations, I'm fortunate that I'm usually never alone when I've encountered any kind of situation. And I'm usually with my wife, and what we tend to do is we tend to tag team things to de-escalate. So in other words, I might go after one person to talk to them, see what's going on. I'm pretty good with distraction, and then my wife would handle something else. One thing that came up was just one scenario was we were in Port Richmond, and unfortunately someone might have had a heart attack or OD'd when they were driving with a younger girl that was related to them. And my wife was taking care of the little girl, and was obviously completely asking her just random questions, which was fantastic, getting her mind off the whole thing. And then I was pretty much just trying to figure out, all right, what's the scenario here? Let me figure out who do I need to call for this to happen. I think, I still don't even know, but I think he had a stroke or something. But yeah, I think just tag teaming with everyone around you, getting everyone else involved into the situation is pretty good, so you don't have a lot falling on your shoulders as well.
You want to jump in, Venice? I was actually going to ask you if you weren't.
Sure. I think it's also kind of important to say that, you can do all of the Ds, or you can intervene, and it still sometimes comes back to slap you in the face. As I mentioned in my example, so it was back in February, I was coming out of work. I work in City Hall, and I look across the street at the MSB building, and there's skateboarders on there. And when I growing up, I was a skate Betty. So I was I was kind of just relishing in it, watching them. Then they started picking up their boards, trying to hit a homeless man. So I'm in shock. So I start documenting, and I keep on watching, and they're circling this guy with their skateboards in their hand. I'm like, okay, what do? Do I walk away? I cross the street. There's security there just watching them. And I'm looking at the security, and I go, And they were just like this. So I go up to the kids and I say, and the majority of the kids were kids of color. And I said, what are you doing? I was like, do you understand that that's considered a weapon? Like, you can get arrested and your life is over. And especially you could be even more targeted because you are a young Black male. Like, and they're like, but you don't understand, this guy's crazy. He's masturbating, he's doing this. And I looked at him, I was like, yeah, he's a little schizophrenic, but you can't hit him. I was like, what about the security? They're like, well, we have security. We called the cops. We've been here for 3 hours. No one's come. And as I'm trying to talk to them and investigate, other kids, it was like 50 of them, were going after this guy. It was about to hit him. So at this point, they're swinging in the air with their skateboards. And I'm like, you don't understand. And then this girl gets in my face and she's like, go back to the suburbs. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh, I'm from Frankfurt. Like, you need to calm down. So then they start coming to my face with their skateboards. And I'm like, really? So I backed off. I was like, because at this point I had like 10 kids in my face with their skateboards. So I go over to the security and I said, are you going to do anything about this? I made up some excuses. So then I had to pull out my ID, which I hate to have to do that. And then they're like, well, what do you want us to do? So then I see another leadership position person from the MSB building, and they're looking. I said, right. So we both call the police. And then within 3 minutes, the police were there. But, overall, I followed like all those things, and it turned out that, if I didn't really hold my ground, like I was under attack at that point. So.
That's really intense. Thanks for sharing that, Denise.
Yeah, that is a horrible situation, and I'm really sorry that it happened. Are there ways that you have in mind now with hindsight, like similar to Don, that you're like, oh, I wish I had tried this or a different order, or just like any thoughts of just like how else it could have gone?
I think it was one of those situations that, I carefully always look into before I go into anything. I'm very good at like, oh, should I intervene? Should I not? And I did everything like accordingly, that I feel that it would have turned out regardless in that way. So after it had happened and the police came and they did kind of escort the schizophrenic guy out of the way, and I guess to the homeless hub and stuff, I walked past these kids and I just looked at them and I was like, and they all just kind of nodded and skated away. They didn't, come after me or things like that. So, I mean, it's just one of those scenarios. Sometimes no matter what you do, it won't turn out. Maybe it did because the police did finally come, but so yeah, I don't know.
It gets way more complicated, right? Thinking of like, what is success? Yeah.
Yes.
You're like, well, it sounds like this homeless man didn't get beaten. It also sounds like he was taken out of a situation where he could have sexually harassed a bunch of people walking by if he was out there doing what the kids said, right? It seems very complicated to be like, you're justified, skateboarders, in not liking his behavior. You're not justified in how you're responding to it. And yeah, appreciate you trying for it. Mm-hmm.
If I can echo off of what Denise is kind of saying, it's like, sadly, the reality of it is when you intervene in any kind of situation where violence is possible or occurring, you are most likely going to be either the victim or at least at the very least at risk of being the victim as well. Because almost every situation I've probably ever had, I've got my nose broken, I've been hit in the face with bottles, it's like that's the reality, sadly, when you intervene in a situation like that. The one thing I would say in like kind of like Denise's situation, something that I'm still trying to learn and get better at, is to not engage with the perpetrator necessarily, because that's the instinct, is like to stop the bad guy, stop them from doing something bad, like don't do that. Where I'm starting to learn as I'm starting to get closer to 50, maybe I should cool it a bit for my own personal well-being, physical safety. So I'm trying to shift more to engaging more with the person who's at risk and removing them. Because anytime you confront a perpetrator of something like that, you put yourself in harm's way, which is the sad reality. But yeah, I think in like the situation Denise was saying, it's like I would have done the same thing, and it's like, but now looking back, it's like, well, maybe I wouldn't have engaged with kids. I would have engaged with the man. You know, I don't know, because you don't know what you can do when you're in the situation. But I would say that the biggest lesson I'm trying to learn is to be less engaging at all with the perpetrator, like not even engage at all. You know, I had a situation in a New York subway where a man was harassing young girls. I didn't quite intervene because they seemed to be okay and be in control of the situation. And then he started harassing a older homeless woman. And then a homeless man stepped in to try to get her out of the situation. He's trying to get her off the subway, but she doesn't want to go. So then it's just a whole kerfuffle. And I intervened the best I could. And I think I did a good job up to the point where I then turned to the perpetrator and faced him off, because that's what ended with a bottle in my face.
Right.
But
it's hard to claim that one as a victory, I see. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I said I can imagine it be difficult to claim that one as a victory.
Right. It was, but it was a lesson in like, okay, well, maybe less engagement with the attacker, the perpetrator, and just more engagement with the victim, and remove from the situation as best as you can.
Yeah, definitely. And wanting to hold out just the ways that like all of these things, from the 5 Ds to the other, like having a tag team, being with someone else, to down what you're saying of like mostly focus on the victim, the person being targeted, whatever. All of them just holding them as options versus hard and fast rules that say this is the one thing to do, just to be like, well, here's a toolbox. Here's what's happening. Do the things in my toolbox fit? Okay, or no, and keeping it moving from there. And something that we haven't gotten into, so I'll just, I guess, name, is the ways that race plays into how interventions go and what options can work for me as a white man, as opposed for someone else. Same thing with masculinity and gender. Right, the things that if I engage the perpetrator, it might turn into a fight because it's this stupid masculinity thing. Whereas if my female partner engages with him, it might not. Just being aware of all of the dynamics when picking options. But we're right about at time. So Richie, I want to throw it your way for the final.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that, y'all. Just wanted to say that like intervention is a muscle that like continues to get built over time. And one, like, you know, just like with the stories that were just shared, something that I ground myself in is like, if I don't feel safe, I can't provide safety for other people. So like really want to honor the ways in which that can come up in the choices that we make. And I also just want to say and offer that like, this is a laboratory that we can continue to be in relationship to and support each other around, because we don't live in a culture that prioritizes building these sorts of skills. And, you know, each situation is different. There's different things going on. And one of the things that we get to do is learn and grow together and build community together to figure out what is going to continue to work or work more and all of that. So just really want to offer that and offer all of the wisdom and brilliance and honor the wisdom and brilliance that you all have all offered today. So thanks so much for everything. Just on the closing notes, do you have an eval, Tobes, to drop in the chat? So Toby's going to drop an eval. You know, this is maybe our first or second, or there it is. One of our first times doing this online. So knowing like what worked or didn't, or like what could happen next time is really important to us. We really value and appreciate and integrate feedback. You know, y'all will have our contact info if you want to follow up with any other questions, concerns, whatever.
And we'll send this out in the email after. Yeah.
And one of the ways that we like to reclaim community at the end of every training is to have some sort of closing. And so we want to close with a poem by Kwabena Foley that I've been thinking about meeting the current moment with everything that's been going on with the uprising and Black Lives Matter movement currently. And so I'm just going to read that out now. Today, another Black boy died. Another Black boy's blood knows the taste of concrete. One America will weep for these boys, while the other praises God for the new strand of red weaved into the flag. When I set fire to the stars and stripes, I am not being unpatriotic. I just miss the black boys so much that I attempt a resurrection. So I think that's all we got. Thanks y'all so much for being here today. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for that.